Hello, my name's Chris Govers. I'm from Habitat for Humanity in Australia. Apologies we could not be with you in person today. You'll be hearing from me, but more importantly, from our colleague at Habitat for Humanity in Fiji, with whom we work very closely. I think it's rather well established that Pacific Island countries are really at the forefront of adapting to the impacts of climate change. Tavita Seniko, our colleague, will speak to you about a case in point in the community of Serua in Fiji.
Habitat for Humanity Fiji in the past years has worked in various communities for community resettlement and climate adaptation. These communities can be found across the country, and one of which is Serua Island. Serua Island is located along the coast of Fiji's main island, and it is heavily affected by the impact of climate change. In terms of our process for resettlement and adaptation interventions, first, we encourage community consultation. This is important to ascertain if the community would like to resettle or look into climate adaptation measures. In the case of Serua, when we began our engagement, we found that part of the community had resettled into another location, while others chose to stay to fulfill their indigenous and traditional obligations. Second step is to work with the community using our participatory approach to climate resilience workshop. This identifies climate change risks with the community and help develop an action plan with adaptive measures that are available, that are locally available. The third step involves the development of a disaster risk reduction master plan. This opens up dialogue between the community and stakeholders. They both look beyond the community to identify resources that are available and can help achieve climate adaptation priorities identified by both parties. Why this process is unique? Because we use local language. Our approach is conversational, and this helps the community to share their thoughts, understanding, and experiences without limitation. Climate mobility is not one size fits all. Each community faces with different realities, and that shapes whether people move or adapt where they are. For donors to truly drive resilience, we must go beyond funding responses. We must invest in understanding. This means grounding actions in research, listening to communities, and support solutions that allow people to live safely, thrive sustainably, and choose their own futures.
Tavita makes some salient points about climate change in the Pacific context. He talked about the diversity of local views and experiences and preferred actions to respond and adapt to climate change, and the critical importance really of spiritual and cultural connections to land, to place, and to home. And he also talked about that need for space, observing local cultural customs and norms and local language, of course, to reveal that complexity and diversity of views. What we find is that community perspectives do vary and are diverse around climate change adaptation in the Pacific, but also really connected to this idea of home. In that disaster risk reduction master planning approach that Tavita described, safe and adequate housing is consistently identified as as a priority for communities and is a critical defence and frontline defence against the impacts of climate change. Other priorities are identified as well. Access to basic services, clean water, sanitation, transportation, livelihoods, access to food security, consistent access, all priorities, but all connected to this idea of home. This is a small scale case in the community of Serua, but the implications are enormous for us all. We need to monitor and amplify these community-led approaches to climate change adaptation. At the moment, we're undertaking some research, PhD-led research, around better measuring what effective climate resilience means for communities that are the most vulnerable, that take account of relational worldviews and that spiritual and cultural indigenous context that's so important, and traditional knowledge and capital and so on. We understand that these measurement systems, they need to be compatible with national and global reporting needs. We invite you to connect with this important work. We think it's critical for global climate strategies. We welcome your participation and to consider this idea of home in the work that you're doing around climate change action.